Today we're gonna make these 2 rug tufting frames for Dan Rodo. And Charlie.
There you go.
He's learning how to rug tuft. Dan Rodo, aka the Danocracy, is a fellow Toronto-based content creator and artist. He makes some awesome stuff, and I'll leave links to all of his social medias in the description. Dan wanted 2 frames for making rugs. A pretty standard size 2.5 foot by 2.5 foot frame and a massive 6 foot by 6 foot frame. Now, I've never made rug tufting frames, but the process seemed pretty straightforward. I decided to make them entirely out of 2x4s and start by building the smaller frame and then basically scale it up and reinforce as necessary for the larger one. Pocket screws ended up being the perfect way to assemble these frames. I used pocket screws for the majority of this project, but I also used some standard 2.5-inch wood screws to add bracing later on. When you make rugs with a tufting gun, you do it on a canvas of monk's cloth. Monk's cloth is basically a loosely woven fabric, and you need a way to hold this fabric to the frame. For this, I use carpet tack strips. As you might guess from their name, these strips are full of tacks, which are all angled in a single direction. Attaching them to the frame with the tacks facing out provides a really simple way to stretch the monk's cloth on the frame. You can find these strips in most hardware stores, but I'll also leave a link to them in the description, along with all the other tools and materials I used in this project. Before continuing with the assembly, I used my circular saw set at 45 degrees to add a nice bevel to some of the more exposed edges. This smaller rug tufting frame would be sitting on a table, so its legs are just long enough to raise it up a little bit to a comfortable working height. At this point, the frame was pretty solid, but I wanted to make sure that it wouldn't sway from side to side or front to back while Dan was working. So I used my Japanese pole saw to cut some corner braces and stiffen the whole thing up. With the small frame pretty much done, I was feeling confident with my process, and I felt ready to move on to the bigger frame. If you've seen any of my videos, you'll know that I have a super small car, and there was no way that this 6 foot by 6 foot frame would fit inside. I was gonna have to transport it in pieces and assemble it on site at Dan's studio. So while I was still working within the comfort of my garage, I got all the dusty work done, cutting the pieces to length and drilling all the holes. The Japanese pole saw is great, but using my circular saw against a speed square was a much faster way to make those 45-degree cuts for the corner braces. By sheer coincidence, or maybe just good spatial awareness, the 2.5 foot frame just squeezed into the trunk of my car. I was so stoked I didn't have to take this thing apart before driving it to Dan's studio. And after loading up my car with the pieces for the big frame and all of the tools I thought I might need, I was ready to head across the city for the install. Dan is a great dude, and he was kind enough to meet me outside his studio and help me unload. The 6 foot frame went together the same way as the small one. It just took a bit more careful choreography and moving it around Dan's studio. But again, Dan was a huge help in helping me move around the frame when I needed it. I thought that my setup for raising this huge frame to its proper height to be screwed to the legs was pretty slick, until I realized that I hadn't yet nailed on the tack strips, and I had to take this whole thing down so I could do that on the ground.
That's perfect, that's exactly what I needed.
The final step in building these frames was attaching 2 loops to guide the yarn. You can see here that Dan was really chomping at the bit to get started on his first rug. He'd already attached monk's cloth and was setting up the projection when I was putting the loops on the smaller frame. And luckily for this video, he got that rug started while I was still there.
Okay, let's do this a little.
It's pretty sweet. Since we shot this video, Dan has already made some awesome rugs, and I can't wait to see him make something massive on the 6-foot frame. For my part, this was a really fun project, mostly because Dan was just a really great person to work with. I love working with other creators, with other people who make videos about making stuff. We're always on a very similar wavelength, so it makes collaborating just an amazing creative process. And this is something I want to do a lot more of. So if you're a creator in the Greater Toronto area and you want to work on something together, let me know. Send me a message, send me an Instagram DM @MorleyKurt. For now, thank you so much for watching. Check out Dan's rug tufting videos and have a great day. Charlie, do you want to be in it?
Sure, here, buddy.
Come here. Here, I'll go inside this one. Today we're gonna make these 2 rug tufting frames for Dan Rodo. And Charlie.
There you go.
Just learn how to rug tuft. All right, I think that's good.
Put it on, man.